Season 10 Split 2 is finally here. We may have had a week delay, but the servers are looking good and the final ranked grind for Season 10 is upon us. Look, we all know the first split is important, but Split 2 is where your rank really counts. And by the end of this video, you'll have all the legend info that you need to grind for those sweet rewards at the end of the season. Anyway guys, my name is Valued, and let's get right into the video. With us going back to Kings Canyon, Rampart getting a rework, and some other balance changes, there are a lot of things that are going to impact the strength of each legend. But guys, it's important to remember that every legend is strong right now. There's not a single legend you couldn't hit Predator on currently if you're good enough. So if you have a pick that you're great with, keep at it. But if you're struggling a bit, or just looking for a new pick to learn for your ranked push, then buckle in because we have you covered today. So let's start from the top. Even on Kings Canyon, the big man Gibraltar reigns supreme. In his current state, Gibby is S tier on every map, and the devs seem okay with keeping it that way. His bubble is the strongest tactical in the game if used properly, and his gun shield and fortified damage reduction are no joke. If you're good with shotties and like to play more of a methodical style of game, you can be so hard to kill, turning a lot of fights on their head with some good bubble play. His pick rate doesn't reflect his strength, but quit sleeping on Gibby because he does not seem to be going anywhere. Alright, and next up, it's a reunion of the classic. We have Kings Canyon, Gibby, and now Bloodhound. Bloodhound was looking like they may get left in Seer's shadow at the beginning of the season, but after some quick nerfs to Seer's entire kit, Bloodhound took back their place as the #1 recon character here in Season 10. Bloodhound also doesn't have any issues with Kings Canyon because their scan can cover about any POI on the map. With less verticality than World's Edge, you can get away with not aiming your scan perfectly more on this map. That verticality not being here is good for Bloodhound. It helps with more consistently finding tracks, and generally, their playstyle works much better when you're not trying to climb a bunch or take ziplines. Bloodhound is looking for clean, single-floor gunfights, and that's what Kings Canyon provides. This is the map where Bloodhound began their dominance, so don't be surprised if you find them doing it again this split. Alright guys, and the classic train keeps on rolling. The next legend up in our S tier is Wraith. Kings Canyon has some wide open spaces between a lot of the POIs, and this open terrain can be very hard to traverse, and Wraith's portal takes care of that for her whole team. Being able to quickly portal your team into a new POI to third party a fight, or avoid fighting altogether is easier for Wraith on this map than arguably any other. Without the verticality of World's Edge, Wraith can give her team quick access to almost any part of the map. Wraith can struggle when she has to try to gain height while placing her portal, but here she can focus on getting as much distance as possible and still have time to find a safe location to place it. Her portal is much more discreet than Valkyrie or Octane, and with everything we just mentioned, it makes it better than these ultimates in many situations here on Kings Canyon. Alright guys, rounding out the S tier, we have Octane. He's been the target of a lot of nerfs in recent splits, but even after his most recent round, he remains a top pick. While his stim and jump pad aren't what they used to be, Kings Canyon is a great Octane map, and he is still a great legend. If you're comfortable with his speed, don't spam his stim. You can win a lot of gunfights you have no business winning with some solid strafing. His stim definitely takes a lot more health, and he regens health slower, which requires you to be a lot smarter with your stim usage. However, his jump pad is just so easy to use for how much value it gets. And with only a 90-second cooldown and a quick deploy time, you will almost always have it up when you need it, and it's pretty hard to mess it up. Wraith's portal may get you further and be a little bit more discreet, but Octane's pad is the quickest on-the-fly movement available in the game that can be used for the whole squad. If anything, the nerfs might keep him from being on every squad, but let's be honest here, probably not. Alright guys, and before we go into the A tier, we have a special message from Imperial Hal himself.
Hey, what's up everyone? I'm Imperial Hal, and welcome to my brand new Apex class. This class goes over everything you need to move, shoot, and think like me. Whether you're silver or diamond, controller or keyboard, you're going to be the one carrying your friends. I typically can't get to all your comments, but this course is actually going to help you guys so much in all your questions. If you're serious about becoming a better Apex player, join me for the next 30 days and commit to improving.
Alright guys, now soaring in at the top of our A tier, we have Valkyrie. She's been in a pretty good state since her release in Season 9, and this holds true here in the second split of Season 10. However, with Kings Canyon back in rotation, her ultimate finds a new level of value that it just didn't have on World's Edge. Rotations have a lot more options and diversity in World's Edge, whereas many of your Kings Canyon rotations are strict and more contested due to all the mountain ranges on the map. This makes Skyward Dive a very valuable ability to reposition your team. The ability to just take off into the sky and land at another POI is so strong on this map, as many of your deaths will come during these hotly contested rotations. If you can manage to get early ring position on Kings Canyon, you're in a great shape, and no other legend does this faster than Valkyrie. And while her VTOL jets aren't helping her climb crazy heights like POIs in World's Edge, it does give her the ability to quickly traverse the high ground on Kings Canyon. With most areas only having a couple stories worth of height, she can take the highest points of the map very quickly. Moving on to our next A-tier legend, we have the recently fallen Seer. If you didn't play Seer on release, well, he was broken. But after some mid-split changes that nerfed essentially every aspect of his kit, he's no longer the must-have legend on your roster. But that isn't to say he isn't very strong. Seer's ability to sniff out enemies is second only to Bloodhound. His scan can be a bit tougher to land, but if you use your heartbeat sensor to guide your aim and get quality ults off when enemies are nearby, his kit can be incredibly valuable. This will be Seer's first split here on Kings Canyon, but his kit seems pretty well suited for the map. His ult range should give him plenty of info about people's movement in these POIs, and his tactical should be able to reach enemies in most situations that you're taking a gunfight with them. Not to mention, his heartbeat sensor is really good at sweeping new locations and ensuring you aren't surprised by a team trying to catch players on the lost Kings Canyon rotations. So if you're looking for a legend to fill that recon role and you don't want to play Bloodhound, Seer is a great choice here in Split 2. Also finding yourself in the A tier, we have the recently buffed Horizon. While the changes weren't massive, they reverted some previous nerfs they'd given her grav lift. While they also made her ultimate have a weaker gravitational pull, this lift change makes her great to play again. The extra lift speed allows her to gain high ground a lot faster, makes her a lot harder to hit, and gives her the chance of actually catching someone off guard with it. Her ultimate really doesn't pull people in nearly as much as before, but it still seems to be enough that you can land some huge nades or force the enemy to sprint their way out of it for a few seconds. Even though it doesn't keep them sucked into the center like before, the CC is still plenty to give you a big edge. And if that's what it took to get her grav lift back towards its previous form, then so be it. If you're looking for a solid offensive legend that's great for solo queuing and setting her team up with good coordination, Horizon's your girl. And also receiving some big buffs at the start of Season 10, we've got the gas man himself, Caustic. The recent changes to his gas, making it tick up in damage the longer enemies stay in it, has shoved this guy up the priority list. He's always been a great defensive legend with a ton of interactions that make him good at holding down areas in the later stages of the game. However, his gas was always a bit underwhelming and never posed enough of a threat to really respect. But now, hear me out, you better respect the gas. The damage now is no joke, and even though they made his ult dissipate a little bit quicker, the damage increase has made Caustic as deadly as ever. Combine this with him blocking doors with his traps, his thermal visions through the gas, and his fortified passive, and he can be really tough to take down in these close-range late-game gunfights. And honestly, his damage is so good that a good offensive ultimate from him now roots out any team camping in a building. Unless it's another Caustic, they will straight up die if they don't get out of the gas, and it can make for a great tool to bust up those already set up teams. Alright guys, rounding out our A tier, we have the solo queue queen, Bangalore. With the tight chokes of Kings Canyon and the long rotations, Bang is great at cutting teams off that are trying to rotate with her smokes and ultimate. She hasn't been changed in quite some time, so she's the same Bangalore that has done quite well on this map before. She has a lot of agency and ability to take care of herself, but also her team if you're smart about her smoke usage and ultimate. Another pick like Gibby that seems to be in a state acceptable by the game devs, Bang is great to pick up and learn if you find yourself playing alone a lot or you just like an offensive role in your squad. Alright guys, starting off the B tier with a bang, we've got the explosive enthusiast Fuse. After his buffs at the start of the season, he has finally made his way into the legend meta, and he's a pretty strong pick. His knuckle clusters are great for breaking doors, zoning, and getting good damage on targets who aren't ready for the cluster. But the big strength these days for Fuse is his ultimate. And here on Kings Canyon, that will be no different. There's a lot of areas on this map that have full buildings that can fit within Fuse's fire ring, and this will make him great for catching out stray members of squads. Being able to launch this and surround a member of an enemy team who's separated is really strong, and with the damage being increased and it now scanning enemies within the ring, Fuse is going to have a great time on Kings Canyon. His animations are long and he takes a little bit of getting used to, but if you're more of a reserved player that wants to launch damage at enemies from range, give old Fusey boy a go. The Robot Man finds himself in the B tier as well, with a whole lot of mobility. His grapple is really strong in the right hands, and his ultimate has some good use cases on Kings Canyon. Sadly, Pathfinder doesn't offer much beyond that. His personal mobility can be some of the best in the game when he gets good grapples going, but his ult feels a little bit underwhelming compared to Valk, Octane, and Wraith. If you're good with the grapple, you can do work on Pathfinder. It has a ton of versatility and people are finding new ways to use it constantly, even though he's been out since the release of the game. However, if you aren't really good with the grapple, you'll find yourself wanting a little bit more out of your kit, in which case there are a ton of options that are a little bit better on this list. Moving on, in the B tier, we also have Revenant. The recent changes to the death totem indicators makes it a little bit easier to play against, but generally, Revenant has been at the same strength for quite some time. He has a strong tactical that when used well, can do a lot of work in a gunfight, and his passives have some nice quality of life buffs. With Octane gradually getting nerfed and moved to Kings Canyon, the Rev-Tane combo isn't as strong as it has been in past seasons, and this is a big aspect of how strong Revenant is in each season. That being said, this combo is still deadly and by far the best way to get the most use out of Death Totem. If you have an Octane, Revenant is a strong pick, but he still struggles without that easy mobility to get his squad into the fray while keeping his totems safe. So in summary, he's definitely a strong legend with the right team, but beware of using him if you're playing as a solo. The Rampart rework is great and added some much needed flavor to her kit, and it's also placed her here in the B tier for the first time ever. Rampart has always struggled with how much setup she needs and how slow to react to changes her kit is. And sadly, they haven't fixed this entirely, but her minigun being mobile is a big step in the right direction for Rampart players. The minigun feels great when you get the chance to lay down some fire on enemies, and it's much better than having to set it up and leave it. This being said, with the minigun requiring operation to give you power, it makes Rampart fill an interesting role. While the minigun is up, there really isn't much else someone should do other than use it. And while this lets her do a ton of damage, she doesn't have any CC like Valk or abilities that deal damage after like Fuse. She sorta has to stay dialed in to her weapon usage, which makes her a bit less flexible than other legends. But she's in a great spot compared to her previous form, and I'm sure once we see players really get her down, she'll be a strong pick in this split. Alright guys, before we move on to the C tier, we've got Crypto finishing out our B tier. Crypto requires a lot of practice and is one of the least intuitive picks in the game. But if you take the time to get good with his drone movement and placement, he could be one of the strongest picks in the game. He'd be higher on this list if it wasn't for this and the fact that he can really struggle in solo queue when you don't have teammates to help capitalize on an EMP or your other info the drone gathers. Kings Canyon isn't his best map, but he definitely doesn't struggle here. If you're a Crypto player, keep at it and you'll do just fine. But if you aren't and you're looking for a good recon pick, then give Bloodhound or Seer a go if you don't have a full team. Loba starts off our C tier with good support for her team and a bit of mobility. Her ultimate is great at making sure her team is well looted throughout the game and can come in clutch in the later stages of the match to get key items when you need them, or just refill on ammo. However, Kings Canyon is pretty spaced out and she can have a tough time getting good ultimate placement that actually has good loot within its range. This isn't something you'll notice a lot, but it will play a factor in those ults later into the game. Her bracelet is a great little piece of mobility, and ever since they changed it last season, it's felt great. Loba's in a fine spot. Just with so many great picks right now, she's fallen down a little bit on the list in priority. If you enjoy her and you're good at getting quality black markets for your team, then keep up the good work. The support role is an underused one in the game, but still, it's appreciated so much. And speaking of underappreciated, we have the lowest pick rate character in the game, and that is Wattson. With the recent Caustic buffs, she's fallen a little bit out of style, but she's still great at holding down an area and really thrives in those late game ring fights. Caustic is a bit more mobile with his approach, and his traps and ulti are a lot more flexible than Wattson. This leaves her as the weakest defensive legend, and it's very rare that you ever want more than one on your squad. While she won't get a lot of play, she's definitely very strong. And if you get sick of playing Caustic, she is a nice change of pace with a similar playstyle. Alrighty guys, finishing off our list, we have Lifeline and Mirage. Lifeline just hasn't been the same since they removed her res shield. Without it, she just has a hard time if her team isn't in cover, and she doesn't see nearly as much pressure when she's in a fight. She still puts a clock on downs on your team, making enemies either push you or get line of sight to kill anyone they knock, or they risk them getting rezzed. Her care package can be good for some extra loot, but it's really just asking to be third party. And Mirage is a good solo queue pick because he can be a huge pain to track down and kill. He can buy a lot of time and get some cheeky reses with his passive, allowing him to go invisible. Great Mirage players make him look really strong, but he doesn't bring a ton to the table unless you already have really solid movement and gun mechanics. Both of these picks can be viable in the right hands, but when we're picking our legends to grind this season, we want impactful legends that are good without you needing to be a crazy good player. Alrighty guys, let me know in the comments below which legend you're looking to grind with in this season. Are you changing up your choices for the second split, or are you still practicing the same pick? I want to hear about it. Make sure to hit that sub button if you guys enjoyed today's video. Anyway, my name's been Valued, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.